Okay, I'm going to try one last time at this issue of thinking for oneself. I think it's important for people to really ask themselves first where that expression came from of thinking for oneself. How many people just took that idea off the rack? They just took it from what anyone and everyone already says around them, and then they think they're thinking for themselves when they say that. But I think the more important thing to ask themselves is, why do people want to believe in thinking for oneself? Now, you might think it's for this higher moral ground and it's for the importance of questioning others and being critical of others. I think I hear a lot of people, and it sounds like what they're suggesting is that the reason that one has to think for oneself is that there are other people who are imposing their views or dogmatically trying to hoodwink one, or that people are being brainwashed or being like a dog, somehow just trained into various things. And one needs to think for oneself to avoid that kind of conformity or obedience. Point well taken. I'm very, very suspicious of the fact that the people who claim that that's their motive. That may be partly the motive for some people. I think if you want to be honest about it, there's a much more obvious motive. What is it? I think we all know, don't we? The people who think we don't know, that's the funny part. We all know. What could be a more obvious motive, a more narcissistic motive, a more clear motive than thinking for oneself? You know what it is? It's a license and prerogative to be lazy, to ignore history, to pretend as if there are tons of people who lived before you who had so much more time, so much more effort, and so much more energy to thinking about ideas, to thinking about things, and instead of having to recover those and engage in dialogue with those, and instead I can just think, well, I've never heard of those people. They're obviously stupid or at least irrelevant because I've never heard of them. What I want to do is think for myself. Yet thinking for oneself has become a kind of license and prerogative to ignore others, to not have to engage others, to pretend as if it's not important to open to others. That's part of this whole thinking for oneself. Yeah, there's a lot of people just walking around, they're talking but not listening to anyone. Think of how odd it is in a culture where we have taught people that the object is to think for oneself, and amidst thinking for oneself, tons of people are in conformity to that. It's ironic, and it's very narcissistic. The motive is very clear. I think people should see very clearly that many people who want to claim that what they're really valuing is independent thought and the importance of thinking for oneself, it's a bunch of moral sloth. It's intellectual sloth. It's people who are trying to relieve themselves of the duty of engaging in the history of ideas. Instead of having to say, wow, there is a long-standing tradition, and many brilliant people were here before I got here. In fact, there are so many brilliant people I could probably spend the rest of my life in libraries reading some of the greatest minds, and I would still not discover some of the greatest minds. I don't think someone should be locked up in a library and doing nothing but that. Oh, but I think that's pretty, it's going in the right direction. Yeah. Who are you listening to? Who are you having a conversation with? How carefully are you fingering spines? Do you know how to walk into a used bookstore or into a library and find those kinds of exceptional minds that are really going to open you? Or do you want to believe, in one sense, that there aren't any exceptional minds? Everybody just has a mind, and everybody's mind is unique and special, and that's why everyone should just have their own thought. Boy, this kind of self-serving, convenient, self-flattering, pandering, narcissistic trend in modern thought is going to be deadly. I can't believe that people can't see that, or I think they can. It's too unfortunate that some people can't see that it is so apparent that many people really, all they want is a world where they don't have to struggle with the idea that there are people who lived before them who really may have something to say to them, but the more that they would discover that, the more they would feel the agony of goofing around, talking about how much they're thinking for themselves. You want to think for yourself. Yes, let's be honest. Do you want to think for yourself? Yes. I think we all want to be clear. That is an important reason to learn how to think, is to think for oneself. You want to be critical. You don't just want to be, quotes, a yes person. You don't want to be some sort of person who runs around and nods and agrees and is easily conformed into whatever is going on. But I don't think that's the only motive. I think if you can't see the other motive, I think you're missing a lot of what's really going on.